Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to the 15th Annual North Carolina Black Summit. This is our virtual experience this year. We're doing all that we can to accommodate both COVID and our need to come together as a community and share as we do, as we have done in the previous 14 years of the summit. So I'm Courtney Crowder, Executive Director of the North Carolina Black Alliance. And this Black Summit, the title being Focused on the Fight and Facing the Future, is just another in a series of incredibly informative and impactful summits that we've had for now almost 2 decades. So just by way of a day one recap, I want to go ahead and again shout out and thank our chair, Senator Valerie Foushee, for coordinating yesterday's activities and events and all of the conversations. We started with a message from Governor Roy Cooper. And of course, we heard from all of our important member organizations. We would not be an alliance without our North Carolina Black elected municipal officials, our North Carolina Association of Black County Officials, the Caucus of Black School Board members, and of course, our Legislative Black Caucus Foundation. So we are excited again we were excited as we have been before, as always, each year with the Voices of History Makers that both inspires us and inspires our work, but also grounds our work and why it's so important. Yesterday, we heard from Brad Thompson, who was the founding and long-term executive director of what was then the Alliance of North Carolina Black Elected Officials. And we also heard from Moses Carey and Edgecombe County Commissioner Viola Harris, with their vision now almost 20 years ago, helped create what is now the North Carolina Black Alliance. And we're so grateful for their work, and we're grateful to have had the opportunity to hear from them yesterday. We also had very informative panel discussion on the impacts and implications of COVID-19 in our community. And we know that those impacts are ongoing and it will impact so much of our daily lives. But we wanted to make sure that we were providing that information to you, our partners, and those that we are in strategic alliance with. Now, for today's day 2 preview, we'll of course get started with a equally impactful and full and substantive agenda for the day. We'll begin in just a few minutes with a coffee conversation with Thomas Stith, the president of the North Carolina Community College System. But we'll also hear from a presentation on the North Carolina Task Force for Racial Equity and Criminal Justice, which was co-chaired by Attorney General Josh Stein and North Carolina Supreme Court Justice Anita Earls. We'll have an update about our Black Alliance programs. You'll hear from Marcus Bass, our Deputy Executive Director, who leads with tremendous force and ably leads our community engagement work. We'll also have 3 concurrent issue sessions that will touch on voter turnout and election administration, the impacts of remote learning in our community as we continue to learn and educate our children in this moment. And we'll also have a legislative overview that will be, again, facilitated by our chair, State Senator Valerie Foushee. So, but next up, and I teased it a moment ago, and you see him on screen with me this morning, we'll have a coffee conversation with Thomas Stith. And Thomas is the 10th president of the North Carolina Community College System. We're excited about his leadership. The Black Summit, he's visited the Black Summit and in many of his previous capacities in leadership. His full bio is, of course, online. It's published in our online journal for you to review. But just at a high level, Thomas is a long-time public servant. He's been a local elected official in the city of Durham. He's been a leading entrepreneur. He's even served academically on issues of business and economic development. And of course, he's held significant leadership appointments at both the state and federal levels. But this morning, we're here to talk to him about his role that we're excited about with the North Carolina Community College System. So Thomas, good morning.
Well, Courtney, it's good to be with you and good to continue to support the summit, all the good work that is accomplished through, as you mentioned, the collaboration of all stakeholders throughout the state. So I'm excited to be here and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you for the time. We do have coffee here, but we can be ambitious if we want to. But I think
I'll play it safe.
I thought we might. We both might. But I wanted to just start really opening our conversation with, if you could just take a moment and sort of place your leadership in this moment in historical context for us.
Well, again, Courtney, it's great to talk this morning. And for me, it is significant and historic for me to lead the third largest community college system in the country. I submit the best community college system in the country at this time in our state's history. You know, I'm a North Carolina native, and I just see it as a blessing. The community college system plays such a critical role in our state's not only educational system, but our economic development ecosystem. And so I take it very seriously and have started to move across the state. We have 58 community colleges across the state. And as you know, it's a big state.
Yes, sir.
Very diverse state. And that's our strength. The diversity of the people of North Carolina coming together in crisis in particular. It's just to see that passion is just very motivating. So for me, from a historical point of view, I think it's the community college system that will lead us not only through recovery, but through economic growth and development. So very excited about it.
Well, you know, you touched on quite a bit, you know, just in that comment, because, you know, you as a native North Carolinian, Eastern North Carolina, I will tell you, you know, your roots in Eastern North Carolina and the work that you've done historically is certainly has you tailor-made for this position. But can you talk a little bit about just your vision? I mean, when you took this role, we were already in pandemic. We already knew that we were going to need economic recovery, and you know, and here you are, you know, casting the vision for, as you said, the third largest community college system, and you have to create a vision that everyone can see themselves in.
Exactly. You know, I have three pillars to my vision in no particular order because they're all very important. But first, that the North Carolina Community College system is the first choice for accessible, affordable education. Whether you're a newly minted high school student pursuing an associate's degree or just want some short-term workforce training, the community college system is an outlet for that. If you're a displaced worker, and we're seeing that obviously because of the impact of COVID, businesses are closing. You can attend your community college and retool and get a new trade. So I think while we have an excellent educational ecosystem in North Carolina, many choices, I think the first choice, when you look at affordability, when you look at the opportunity to enter our doors, we have an open door for all citizens in North Carolina. And I think that's one key thing that people need to remember. Their local community college has an open door. You enroll, you participate, and you're educated. So first and foremost, that we are that first choice. So the first look for accessible, affordable education. Secondly, that we do not only lead during this recovery, but we lead the growth of North Carolina's economy moving forward. We have a strong working relationship with business and industry because if you talk to CEOs across the state, business leaders across the state, they are hiring. They have opportunities within their companies, and they're seeking out the workforce that we can prepare within the community college system. And for me, a foundational point is what I touched on a little earlier. It's the diversity of the people of our state is our strength. From the mountains to the coast, to the Piedmont, that's our unique competitive advantage. And I see our community college system becoming a national model for diversity and inclusion, building on the strength of our citizens, building on the strength and the tradition of North Carolina, and really leading from a national perspective when you speak to diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, well, I think certainly diversity and inclusion in this, you know, has been the issue of the day. Obviously, you know, justice is at the center of every business plan, every strategic plan. And again, your leadership as, being an African-American leader, sort of steering the helm in this moment, I mean, is tremendous. And I just wonder, as you sort of look at that issue and think about it proactively, how do we, continue to support as an alliance, support that?
Sure. I think what we're doing today, always having dialogue, and in the community college system, while it has been a stalwart, we still have work to do. I'm in too many conversations that people say, well, our system, North Carolina Community College system, is the best kept secret in North Carolina. Yeah. And they feel that's a compliment, and I take it as such, but that's not where we want to be. We want to be known. I was just at one of our local community colleges, just happened to be down east, as you know, my family's from Eastern North Carolina, and it was at Pitt Community College. Very just strong, excellent leadership with Dr. Rouse at Pitt. And you had a classroom full of high school students. They were learning electronics. They had studied formulas for 2 weeks prior. They were actually building the widgets and flying them. But the striking thing about that is it was during their spring break. And so you had students on campus investing in their educational future, utilizing their local community college. So as I tell that story, I know the opportunities that exist when our citizens engage, whether it's, as I said, a worker retraining or a high school student. We are looking at and disaggregating the numbers. When we look at enrollment, in particular, the impact of COVID, one of the two groups that were significantly impacted were African-American males and Hispanic males. We saw over 20 to 30% drop in enrollment, and that's not acceptable. That's as a result of the pandemic. But we know as we move forward, we need to have a strategic view that ensures that we're inclusive. Our board is now pursuing a diversity and inclusion work plan and trying to see if there are any barriers to access for our minority community, in particular in North Carolina. That will be presented in June of this year. Dr. Thomas Walker at Wayne Community College leads that, along with Dr. Tomas in the West. We will be implementing those recommendations. So when we talk diversity and inclusion, I think we have to be very holistic about it. We have to look at our enrollment. We have to look at ways to ensure that we're supporting our students, not only through financial aid and support, but those services, whether it's childcare, transportation, those type issues are the issues that our students face each and every day. So we're very laser focused at the system office to ensure we are embracing our citizens across the state, and that our 58 colleges continue to have that open door policy.
Yeah, I mean, some of those barriers that you just mentioned, it's just on the other side of those barriers is the opportunity.
Yeah.
And so it's exciting to hear you talk about that, because I know that that leadership coming from the highest level is going to have impacts on all those colleges across the state. I'm thinking about a panel discussion that we had yesterday on the impacts of COVID and some of those implications, and you've touched on it, but you took the helm at the height
exactly
of pandemic, and you talk about the impact that it's had on enrollment for our African American Latinx males. What are some of the other impacts of the pandemic right now that you're as you're trying to steward this system?
Our colleges across the state have stayed open throughout the pandemic, but the impact that we have seen as a result of COVID is an acceleration of our flexible learning model. So we had to have a more virtual environment, but we had continued to have hands-on in classroom. I attended a couple of welding classes. They've yet to let me weld. I don't know if they just assessed it. I need a few classes before they let me near the equipment. But so having said that, we've had to pivot because of the environment. It provided us an opportunity to utilize some of the federal funding to assess what rural community colleges didn't have access to broadband or wireless communications. And we had 20 colleges that now have that broadband and wireless capabilities. And that's not only a resource for our students to utilize for online, but we have comments from our presidents that they just, general community will come to our parking lot so they can access the Wi-Fi. So for us, COVID not only has enhanced our virtual space for our students while at the same time maintaining on-campus presence, we also have to see, it has helped us strategically be even more engaged in the communities that we serve.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's one thing, we think about extending broadband. I know we'll have a conversation, one of our live panel discussions in just about an hour or so. We'll touch on that and some of the virtual, the implications on our K-12 students.
Yeah, and we're seeing that as well, and looking at strategies to help me. There clearly has been an impact over the last year on our K-12 environment, and will those graduates, those high school graduates, be properly prepared for post-secondary education? And so we're looking at ways to ensure that we're providing those support services to students as they come out of, it's been a global pandemic. None of us have had to maneuver those waters, even though, it feels, I'm feeling my age these days, but I was not around during the Spanish flu. So we're all having to really adjust and make sure that we address what we know is an impact on our students during this, very heavy virtual environment in our K-12 arena.
Yeah, it's the impacts of the pandemic will be with us, and we know that. But I guess, I'm thinking about also, one of the views that you have as president of the system and leading the community college system. Obviously, you get the chance to sort of see the industry growth, or those places where it's high opportunity, for the entire state. But as we think about, the advocacy of this organization is always about trying to support opportunity for Black community and connecting our communities to that opportunity. Sure. But when you think about those industries that are growing and where the opportunities may be plentiful, or where with some time at community college, our young people and those mid-career might even find the next opportunity. What are some of those careers that those opportunities that we're thinking about?
That's an excellent point. In several areas, we've identified 8 to 10, high growth careers, also high salary, because as people either are entering their career and learning a specific area, or either retooling, they want to have an opportunity at the end of that process. And that's one of the things, we focus on in the community college system, that individuals that come to us are seeking opportunity. It's a part of my personal tenet that education equals opportunity. And so everything from the obvious healthcare certainly is very much in demand now, from our nurses to healthcare technicians, but also in our IT area. Right here in the Triangle, it was recently announced that Google is going to have an engineering hub in Durham, my hometown. Although the roots pull me east, I grew up and born and raised in Durham. There will be a significant amount of those positions that will require 4-year degrees, engineering degrees, but Google has made it clear that they will engage with our community college system for those tech positions that don't require that a 2-year associate or a short-term or workforce training type certificate would be required. We were able to receive funding, federal funding, some of the recovery fundings. Governor Cooper set up a GEAR program, which is for short-term workforce training. With significant amount of funds available, we're going to start ensuring that we're amplifying that message so that individuals know their financial resources available to hone in on some of these careers that we've identified that are in very large demand. We talk to CEOs across the state, and as I have those conversations, whether it's the coast or the Triad or the West, it could be in the automotive industry, and they say, I could hire 100 techs today. In the boating industry, the same thing. And so the opportunities exist. We've identified, as I mentioned, some of those high growth areas. Yeah. That's why it's very critical for people to engage with their local community college to seek that training and seek that education.
Yeah, and you raise an incredibly important point. Again, one of the values of a conversation like this, we hope the value of a conversation like this for our members and our partner organizations, and the advocates that we're aligned with, is to pick up on exactly what I'm about to sort of drill in a little bit, and that's the GEAR program, or those resources that are available, and they are available across the system.
Yes.
So if we have young, enterprising, or mid-career folks that are looking for that next opportunity, they should approach the community college, their local community college, as a resource.
Oh, clearly. And I think, and that's our role, to ensure that we make those resources known to individuals that are seeking it. You have the GEAR program, as I mentioned, providing financial support for our curriculum programs and the 2-year associates, that type track. And we also have a track for teaching, where you can either associates in arts or sciences and teacher preparation. And we have articulation agreements with our 4-year institutions in the state. We also, strong support by our North Carolina General Assembly to ensure that we have the proper resources to meet the demand. But again, making sure that people identify the community college as a resource for them to pursue their initial education or retraining is really critical at this time.
Yeah, no, and I think, we find, obviously, with the our connection and our local advocacy, that it's about, again, connecting to those opportunities. But we also see it on issues like minority business participation. And so when I think about the level of engagement with industry that you have, I wonder, to those that are really focused on the issue of historic unutilized business, how do we connect to the resources of the community college to help continue to advance on that issue?
Sure. I think the first step would be utilizing our small business centers. We have 58 across the state. You have a small business center at each of our community colleges, and they can provide support for initial business startup. If you're writing your business plan, trying to understand what the market may entail, but also as you mature as a business and you're trying to either access state or federal contracts or working with private sector companies, can help develop a marketing plan around that. So my thought would be the first step is to engage your small business center located at your community college. It's a resource that's available, no cost, and it provides that support mechanism that in some cases, certainly our early stage businesses and sometimes mid-sized businesses in general don't have those resources to hire a consultant, but they could utilize the small business center to help them be prepared for those opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, it's we are finding that minority business participation, really, those resources, those toolkits that you just described, those are the types of things that are top of mind and it really has been for quite a while. So continuing to think about how we use all the resources that are at our disposal is incredibly important.
Exactly. While we are in a recovery mode from an economic perspective, as we work with the business leaders in the state, it is clear the North Carolina economy is going to recover. But our vision, and as part of my vision for diversity and inclusion, as we have that recovery, we need to ensure that all boats rise, and have a strategy. And that's why I think the system can be a very key ally in that and collaborator. That as our economy recovers, as the opportunities unfold, that we are very inclusive in our business practices as well. And again, that the strength of our state is the diversity of our state. So we need to ensure that our business practices are diverse as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, I think, I always think whenever I've started something new, and I'm sure the same is for you, there's always something that once you get into it, you go in, you got your plan, you prepared, you studied,
right.
You go in, there are 10, 12 questions you're prepared for. And then there's the 13th or the 14th, those other things that, you just didn't quite realize was going to be as important or significant to the success of this new opportunity.
Sure.
I'm wondering, what's been maybe an issue or a scenario that you didn't quite see, on the horizon? Because I know you are a prepared human being.
Yeah.
You are always prepared and ready for the moment.
Right.
But in those moments, something might be new.
Sure. And while I feel, this experience for me, as I said, is a blessing. And I think when you look back over your life and you see the things you've gone through, and then you see where you are right now, you say, well, this thing started to make sense that didn't make sense before.
That's
and
right.
So you feel, and I'm just commenting on your point, I felt prepared as I stepped in. A little surprised stepping in, but felt prepared. I tell you, it's interesting because as you framed the question, I started to think, okay, what were the gotchas? But sometimes we think of those as the negative gotchas.
Right.
Really, the gotcha for me so far has been the overwhelming passion that I have seen, whether it's at the system office here in Raleigh, the colleges. I try to literally go to at least 1 to 2 colleges a week, as we maneuver through COVID. But it is a consistent passion for service and to provide an opportunity for our students, whether they're high school students or whether they're mid-career students. For us, they're all students. They're our customers. And just the commitment of individuals at the college level and at the system level to be there to serve our mission. It's been refreshing, and is a part of my enthusiasm to know that this is the time for our system, while we've been a stalwart in the state, to really lead now and to lead in a visible way. We have the talent and we have the commitment and passion throughout the system to do so. And so that it was a refreshing surprise. Certainly, you're going to have opportunities, and so I don't say challenges or problems, but there are always going to be opportunities. But so that's not surprising.
Right.
When I run into those, I'm like, okay, here it is. But what the pleasant surprise has been just the passion of the folks involved with the system.
Well, everyone's got a community college story, right? I mean, a family member, someone in your church, there is just that opportunity. I mean, it's right there in the name. It's community college.
Exactly.
Exactly. And so, and that also continues to sort of ring, just through this conversation, thinking about, that glide path for opportunity for, again, this Black Alliance, we want opportunity for all, but definitely the sensitivity around opportunity for African American. And so it's, just recognizing that resource.
Yeah. I mean, I've had discussions before when we talk about how the community college system will change your life, but in many cases, it's saving lives. I hosted a group from Foresight Tech this week, and President Sprigg, but their SGA president, African-American male, he is now working for Corning. But when he arrived in Winston-Salem and stepped off the bus, he stepped off of his living conditions. He had no job, he had no housing, he had no money. And in short order, after engaging with his community college, he's now a professional at Corning, finishing up his studies at Foresight Tech. Yes, we are a community college. Our doors are open to all, and it is life-changing and life-saving, and providing the opportunity for individuals to have very viable careers. And everyone has their own matrix for success, but we believe folks that engage with the community college system, they need economic success as a part of that matrix as well. And regardless of the career, we have truck driver training programs. You go through that several weeks training, you come out in many cases averaging over $50,000 a year. The students that I was talking to at Pitt Community College, there's a very strong pharma and biotech industry there. You graduate making $45,000, $50,000 a year, and in a couple of years, you're over $100,000.
Right.
I don't know if you called a plumber anytime lately, but we have that training as well. And an interesting story in Western North Carolina, I was at a meeting of 10 presidents, and one of their students approached one of the presidents and said, you want to know how you become a millionaire? And he's like, well, how? Say, go to the community college and learn to be a plumber. He had done so. He practiced the trade for about 2 to 3 years, started his own company, hired 6 or 7 other plumbers, and now he owns a multi-million-dollar business. So the impact, and that's his path.
Sure.
But as you look at the opportunities within the system, whether you want to be an entrepreneur through a trade, or whether you want to be a healthcare provider or work in IT, the opportunity to do that is there, and the open door and the financial accessibility of the community college system is what really uplifts my point that we need to be the first choice as individuals look at their career future.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the conversation this morning and with the coffee that we did not have.
Exactly.
But
it smelled good.
But it smelled good. It's great. It's wonderful. But it really, the conversation, I think, allows the folk, the Black Alliance and our partners to appreciate and see your passion and to see you yet again with this organization in a key leadership role for our state. And so, first of all, we thank you for your continued commitment and your responsiveness and your willingness to always join with us and to share. In what you pointed out and shared this morning about the community college system, I think will continue to allow us to hone our advocacy and really push and be in partnership even with the system as we advocate in our partnerships. And so we look forward to seeing you again.
Well, I look forward to the invitation, and we'll try to get at least one sip of coffee next time. Next time.
Too risky right here on this camera.
Right.
But again, Thomas, thank you. And as we continue to move through our agenda for the day, again, we thank President Stiff for his time. But we also know that as we move into our next segment, we're going to have more of a presentation about the North Carolina Task Force that's working on criminal justice reform in our justice system that's already really laser focused on addressing systemic racism throughout the justice system. There have been recommendations, over 123 to be exact, recommendations for policy, accountability, fairness in the court system. And so we are looking forward to that presentation coming to you all now. Again, we thank President Stiff for his time this morning.
Hello, everyone. I'm Attorney General Josh Stein. I want to thank my good friends, Senator Valerie Foushee and Courtney Crowder, for this invitation and for everyone who helped pull together this conference. It's great to be with you, although I do wish we were together in person. With the vaccine campaign fully underway, I am filled with genuine optimism about good things coming our way right around the corner. And one of those will be our ability to be together at next year's conference. Your theme this year is Focus on the Fight Facing the Future. That is a great summation of where we are in our work to reform the criminal justice system. We are once again mourning the loss of young Black people killed at the hands of law enforcement officers. Daunte Wright, Donovan Lynch, and so many others deserve justice. It is imperative, it is a necessity that we root out systemic racism from our criminal justice system. I was honored last summer when Governor Roy Cooper asked me to co-chair the Task Force for Racial Justice in the criminal justice system, along with Associate Supreme Court Justice Anita Earls. Our task force worked hard last year to develop 125 recommendations to address the issues of police accountability, fairness in the courts, and so much more. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the work we're doing to reimagine public safety. And in a moment, Justice Earls will talk about how that plays out in the courts. We had recommendations concerning policing practices, promoting community policing to rebuild the trust between people and the police that serve them. We had use of force policies to ban chokeholds and to require a duty to intervene by law enforcement seeing other law enforcement using excessive force, and then to report that to superiors. We want more diversion programs to move people with addiction out of the criminal justice system and into the healthcare system. We have recruitment and training recommendations. We want to have the best and brightest and public-spirited go into law enforcement, people who approach the job with the spirit of guardianship and not that of a warrior. A greater emphasis on de-escalation, crisis intervention, ethics, and implicit bias in the training programs. And we want more accountability and transparency, body and dash cams so we know what happened, independent investigations of police-involved shootings, and if a criminal act occurred, to have an independent prosecution. We want a database to address the problem of officers wandering from one agency to another after they run into problems at the first. Last year, it was all about coming up with 125 of these recommendations. This year and next, it is all about implementation. Some of these recommendations are already moving. A number of legislators watching this conference have introduced bills that would put into effect a number of these recommendations. But many of them do not require new legislation at all in order to be implemented. Many can be put into practice at the local level today. And I know all of you are deeply engaged on these issues in your own communities. If you're a mayor, a city or town councilor, or a county commissioner, you can work with your police chief or sheriff to implement many of these recommendations. If you're on the school board, we have ideas about how to close the school to prison pipeline. To learn more about the task force and what you can do at the local level to help implement these changes, please contact Jasmine McGee in my office. She heads the public protection section, or John Brown, who works with Jasmine. Now is the time to make real the promise of America. Now is the time to achieve once and for all times equal justice under law. I look forward to working alongside each of you now and in the years to come to do just that, to make North Carolina's criminal justice system fair to everyone, no matter the color of your skin. Thank you all for your attention and, more importantly, for your public service. Now, I'll turn it over to my colleague who has provided tremendous leadership throughout our collective effort, Justice Anita Earls.
Thank you, Attorney General Stein. And hello, North Carolina Black Alliance. I'm Anita Earls, an Associate Justice on the North Carolina Supreme Court. Thank you so much for your interest in the work of the task force. In a very brief time, I want to talk about some of the significant reforms that have already happened, some important recommendations we're making about the court system, and what you can do to help us. We can't make the kind of systemic and lasting change that is necessary to bring racial equity to our criminal justice system without the participation of so many of you across the state. One very important accomplishment that I have to talk about that impacts the court system is the governor's recent establishment of a juvenile sentencing review board. And what this board will do is look at the sentences of juvenile people who've been convicted and sentenced based on conduct that occurred when they were under 18 years old. And for certain individuals, if they've served 15 to 20 years of that sentence, they're now eligible to apply to this board for review of whether they should be released at this time. This has an important impact on racial equity because when we looked at the data, 93% of people who are sentenced to the longest possible sentence, juvenile life without parole, again, people sentenced for conduct occurring before they were 18, 93% are people of color. So establishing this board and giving them an avenue to have their sentences re-examined will have a huge impact. And we know from the experience in other states, the District of Columbia, for example, has had a second look act process in place, and of the 70 cases that they reviewed, 60 resulted in the individual being released. So this is a really important reform that will make a huge difference in our state. But there are many other important changes that need to happen within the court system. A couple of things that I want to highlight are the recommendations relating to fines and fees, and the fact that so many people have criminal justice system debt. They owe fines and fees that they can't pay, sometimes for very minor traffic offenses, but the amount builds up and follows you. So we need to put in place a wide range of changes that will both keep these fines and fees from being assessed on people who don't have the ability to pay in the first place, and then ameliorate the impact on people who already have this debt. And it's one way in which our system is actually criminalizing poverty, and it also has a disparate racial impact. I want to highlight that the work of this task force will continue on through the end of next year, but we have recommended that there be a permanent entity. And I think stressing that it took us many years to get where we are at this point in time, and it's going to take constant vigilance, data collection, monitoring the impact of these reforms in order to get us where we need to be. Finally, let me say a word about what needs to happen at the local level, because while many of these reforms need legislative action, and I am so grateful to the state legislators who have introduced bills to accomplish a lot of what we have recommended, and advocacy around those measures is so crucially important. But we do need work at the local level as well. And some of our, I think, most far-reaching recommendations are things that can be implemented at the local level. So I'm talking here about restorative justice programs, talking about some of the school justice partnerships that can end the school to prison pipeline, and working with your local reentry councils, working with local businesses to help end the collateral consequences of having a felony conviction, opening up jobs, housing opportunities, educational opportunities, so that people are not barred from taking advantage of those because of a past criminal record. So in closing, let me say that, as you all know, many of the actors in the criminal justice system are elected. Our judges, our DAs, our sheriffs, and I hope that you are asking them the tough questions about what their vision is for how to address the issues of racial equity in our criminal justice system. And I hope you know our meetings are always open. We leave time at the end of the meeting for public comment. Our website lists contact information, so please let us know what the issues are in your community and what you think we need to be working on. So that website is ncdoj.gov/TREC, TREC. So thank you again, and I look forward to interacting with all of you. Thanks.
So that was an incredibly informative update on the work of the North Carolina Task Force and all the effort to reform the criminal justice system in North Carolina. So we're grateful for the work of Attorney General Stein and Justice Earls and their ongoing work. But now we want to shift to our next sort of special update on the municipal elections. Marcus Bass and Val Applewhite will give us a little bit more of an insight on all that's at stake with the upcoming municipal elections for 2021. We know that the census has far-reaching implications as it relates to redistricting, and the impacts on the election this fall is incredibly impactful. So please pay attention and get this additional information on what's going on with our elections this fall.
I want to say great afternoon to everyone. We hope you are enjoying this virtual experience of the North Carolina Black Summit. My name is Marcus Bass. I'm the Deputy Director for NCBA, and I'm joined today by the Southeast Regional Coordinator for Advanced North Carolina, Val Applewhite. And we are here to bring you, in the midst of this virtual experience, information that you all should care about that's happening right now in our very own backyards. Our organizations are poised together, Advanced Carolina and the North Carolina Black Alliance, to provide strategy and advocacy to help enhance Black political power. And in this special update, we're going to be talking about this delay in municipal elections and what it means for voters of color and for our elected officials across the state. Now, the delay in the census is caused by several different circumstances. We all know this previous administration was very eager to be very vocal about underfunding the census. There was a lot of conversation about a low count in a lot of our communities. And even here in North Carolina, despite the hard work of advocacy groups and census tables across the state, we still have a number of undercounted communities that the current administration is taking into consideration as they wait to certify the election results. Now, the impact of a delayed census has a lot of implications beyond what we typically think about when we think about census. Now, for North Carolina, a lot of us are already wondering what it means about the process for redistricting on a federal level, on a state level, and on a local level. The maps are drawn for elections at every single level based on the 2020 census data. And with the delay in the census data, not only are municipal level elections being delayed, but we're seeing too a lot of other areas in government wondering what the delay in census data will mean for them as well. When we talk about government, we can't go too far without talking about spending, and the appropriations based on population counts goes into spending limits on a state and local level. And so a lot of our municipalities depend on the census data for the federal government to be able to share how much of resources of our city, of our country is divided amongst all these municipalities. Last but not least, and while the conversation is so reticent today, the impact on this delay of census certification is going to wreak havoc on 2021 elections. There's already a lot of talk in papers across the state of North Carolina and even in the media around what the General Assembly is going to do with this delay in the election because of census data. Now, very important to note here that the State Board of Elections is a value stakeholder in the process, but ultimately the General Assembly and lawmakers in the General Assembly, along with municipalities, do have a level of power that can be weighed in deciding whether or not to have a local election this year. Let's talk about the impact in North Carolina very briefly. We are talking about a state that has 552 municipalities in 100 counties. But when we talk about those that have districts on a city council level, there are 39 districted municipal elections. What that means is 39 of our cities in North Carolina elect their city council based on district representation, their actual lines that govern the number of representatives. In certain cases, the vast majority of municipalities have at-large representation on their city council. And also, we can't forget the Board of Education. There are 4 boards of education that are currently in flux of not knowing how their lines are going to be drawn for their election because of this delay in census data. Now, even though this looks like a marginal number of cities and a marginal number of boards of education, we have to really examine the impact. The list that is rolling across your screen right now shows you the cities, the actual municipalities in North Carolina that are going to be limited by typically having an election in an off-cycle year like this. Now, in the midst of the delay in census data, some of these municipalities, if not all of these municipalities, may be forced to push their municipal election over to 2022. And what that means for residents is a huge impact that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. By the numbers, however, we're talking about 1.4 million voters of color that could be delayed. And of that, 901,000 Black voters in districted municipal elections across the state. That looks like 29 municipalities that have over 40% of Black voters as 40% of their voting population are Black voters. And then in this case, 75 of these municipalities are a part of Voting Rights Act counties. And we all know how important the Voting Rights Act is to the franchise of Black voters in North Carolina. And so the impact, when you look at the numbers, is very discriminately going to go towards Black residents who may be disenfranchised this year by not having an election, simply because there's a delay in census data. Now, 63% of Black voters impacted across the state is a significant number, especially when we look at the precedent of one person, one vote. If one municipality is having an election in a county, the Constitution mandates that every person should have a right to vote for their representation on a local level. And in this case, even though there is not typical uniformity, some cities like Winston-Salem and Asheville have their municipal level elections during presidential years. The vast number of cities and municipalities in North Carolina still utilize this off-cycle election year to have their election, and very important reasons why we do that in an off-cycle election year. Typically, the cost is a lot less for individuals running for office. The reach and expansion community in these elections is very large because a lot of these are community-based elections. And one of the most important things, the ballot is going to be typically long in a midterm election. But this year, having to have an election in an off-cycle election year gives you a chance to focus on those important local level races in North Carolina. Some dates and deadlines for folks that are interested in the municipals for 2021 are here on your screen. And then the candidate filing periods for individuals that are thinking about running for offices on a local level or on the screen on your right-hand side. There's a set of dates for filing for municipalities with only at-large representation. And then there's a separate filing date for municipalities with districts. Now, the census data won't be available until September. So a lot of us are still watching this process to ensure that our communities realize the impact of potentially not having an election this year or having an election based on old census data and the current districts that are in place. So for a local context, I'm going to bring in our Southeast Regional Coordinator for Advanced North Carolina, Val Applewhite. Val, you've been in local politics. You've been engaged on a state level. You've seen the game in a bunch of different ways. Tell us a little bit about what this delay could or could not mean in Fayetteville, and tell us a little bit more about what some folks in community are trying to do to kind of shake up the representation in the city.
Thank you, Marcus. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And in addition to my role with Advanced Carolina, you know that I served on the Fayetteville City Council for 3 terms. So absolutely, I am tuned in, and you hit on a lot of key points that many elected officials already understand. Fayetteville is a unique place. Right now, we are in the midst of a 5-4 referendum. And you talked about at-large seats across the state. Right now in the city of Fayetteville, there are 9 at-large, there are 9 district seats and 1 at-large seat, which is the mayor, Mayor Colvin. He's the second African-American mayor in our city. But there is an effort right now to change the composition to a 5-4. There are a group of interested individuals that have already stood up a referendum committee. And if history repeats itself, they will be successful. So this is not the first time this has happened in Fayetteville. Back in 2006, 2007, there was a 6-3 referendum, same premise. But the only difference, even though it passed at the ballot, we still had the protections of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. Now that is gone. So the discussion here in the community is, will they get 5,000 signatures? Absolutely, we believe that. Does it have the potential to pass at the ballot? Well, perhaps, but we believe that having this election next year, when voter turnout will be higher, particularly amongst groups that would like to see this pass, this is a concern for our community.
Val, you brought up a lot of valid points there, and I really appreciate the vantage point that you have, being on the advocacy end, being in the elected end.
Yes.
It gives you a sense of understanding of what this means. And a lot of folks that are typically just looking at, the election at a one take deal. You're used to the municipal level election happening every off-cycle election year. You may think it's good to have it during a midterm cycle. You may think that in a lot of cases, high voter turnout is good. And it is good, but in this case, when we look at the impact on local level elections, and especially when we look at this referendum that they're trying to do to shake up the district format, that may not be the case. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely, it's not going to be the case. To understand Fayetteville, I wasn't surprised that this whole initiative came back from the 6-3 to the 6-4. If you're not familiar with Fayetteville City Council, we have 8 out of 10 of our seats are held by African Americans. So with the politics in this community, there's a distinct effort to break that up. I'm going to just tell you how it is. So how do they gain control? How do people that are not tuned into our community or work in opposition to our community, how can they take that back? How can they prevent from 8 African Americans being elected to the city council? Of course, it's with at-large seats. And I absolutely believe if it had not been for the dominance that we have on the city council, that the same people, I want to remind you, very wealthy people in this community, in fact, a former mayor headed up the 6-3. That same mayor is heading up the 5-4. So having this in a midterm election, we know what happens during midterms. There is going to be a surge, particularly amongst Republican voters, potentially, and this will pass. And we don't have the protections of the Voting Rights Act. And you mentioned a number of counties that, had fallen underneath that. That's a serious impact to our future.
Val, this is the Black Summit. Even though it's a virtual experience, we can still make it all the way plain.
Right.
What is this going to mean for Black representation in the city of Fayetteville on a city council level?
Yes, there won't be that many. We won't have that representation. I ran at large for mayor, and it is difficult. You said this, Marcus, the money that's required to run at large in the city, a district, $3,000 to $5,000, at large, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $100,000. And the backing that provides the money in Fayetteville does not lean toward African Americans. So what we're looking at is flipping the city council. My guess, if we had a 5-4, if we had three representatives on that council, I'd be surprised. The money people are lined up and we won't have the representation. We have historical areas like Murchison Road, Fayetteville State University, where there's growth. They want to control that, and this is the way. Mitch Colvin has been a great advocate for issues that affect the entire city, but he's sensitive about the issues that affect the African-American community. That doesn't bode well for a lot of people because we're family here, we're talking, right? So the previous mayor, the money people, the developers are going to put forth every effort to flip the city council.
Well, Val, I know your finger is going to be on the pulse in Fayetteville and Cumberland County. I know that there's a lot of different ways that folks can engage. What do you think is the best way if folks are trying to really figure out what's going on? Should they watch a city council meeting? Should they call in to their district representative? How should they really engage locally around this issue to make sure their representation knows that they're watching?
Watch us, Advance Carolina. We're going to lead the educational effort. We're going to lead that in our community. So we're going to work to educate people. Folks are busy. They're going to work every day, don't see what's going on, but we're going to host a series of community Zoom calls, outreach to make sure people are educated and informed when they go to the polls and understand the impact to their representation. So, the way the politics turnout happens in Fayetteville, there are key precincts. When they surge high, they can control the entire race. I'll use my race for mayor as an example. I won a good portion of the city, but there were 3 or 4 Republican precincts that surged really high and took control of the race. So we've got to let people understand that, not just what's happening, but the importance in turning out, whether it's this year or next year. The implications are huge.
Well, Val, this has been a huge conversation in a short amount of time, but just like every summit, we wish we had more time, but there's always ways that we can get engaged. Thank you so much for sharing with us a little bit about what's happening in the Southeast. Our eyes and attention are going to be on Fayetteville and every single one of these municipalities, and we're going to be making sure that our voters, our representatives, our Black elected officials are prepared for what's going to happen in whatever come what may. If it's a 2021 election, a 2022 election, or if someone tries to sneak in some very interesting language or amendments on a local level to shake up the way things are. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending this very quick special edition, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your virtual experience at the North Carolina Black Summit.
Thanks, Marcus and Val, for really digging into some of the implications around the potential impact of shifting the municipal elections this fall. I think we really need to understand for our Black elected municipal officials and all the work that they do to represent our communities, that we understand the potential for impact. And so I really appreciate them going into that level of detail and sharing that information with us and with our network, because this is an issue that we're going to have an incredible amount of focus on as we go through the rest of the year and into potentially into 2022. So again, thank you all for that. Now we are about to move into our live concurrent breakout sessions. We'll have a chance to really get that dynamic feedback and that dynamic interaction that really is one of the hallmarks of the Black Summit every year. Unfortunately, you will need to actually choose one. You won't be able to do all three. But that's okay, because next week on our website, you'll be able to access all of the breakout sessions and hear what went on in each session. But today, we need you to choose just one. And in each of the three sessions, you'll be able to access by either returning to our conference webpage or following the link that's been dropped into the chat for you to navigate. So session 1 is about enhancing voter turnout and election administration. Session 2 is the impact of remote learning, and we'll focus in on some of the impacts that the pandemic has had on education and on our students, many of our students. And then session 3 will be a legislative update that will give some insights on some of those issues that are top of mind and that are also going through the General Assembly right now. So again, immediately following the breakout sessions, we will take a brief conference break and then return at 11:35 for our concluding program that will include keynote remarks, if you will, from Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. And so again, we're excited about his participation, because we know that the luncheon that's named in honor of Senator Jenny Hopkins Lucas is, again, one of our premier events for every single Black Summit. So we're excited for that. So in just a few minutes, you'll have the opportunity to navigate to our conference website by following the link or returning to our website and accessing one of our 3 live concurrent panels. Welcome back, everybody. I know that everyone enjoyed the dynamic discussions within our live breakout sessions. Again, that's a key feature of our annual NC Black Summits, that we have those detailed policy discussions on the issues that are impacting the community. One of the key features of our alliance that keeps us strongly connected from an intergovernmental perspective is the fact that we have, in addition to our organizations that represent our various affinity groups of local elected officials, we have incredible partnership and engagement from our members of Congress, and in particular, Congressman G.K. Butterfield and Congresswoman Alma Adams, who are providing tremendous leadership in Washington, D.C. We're excited about the leadership that Congressman Butterfield is giving to the House Elections Committee. And of course, Congresswoman Adams has always led at a high level with respect to the bipartisan commission on HBCUs. And both of them do so many other things, but those are two efforts and initiatives that we are incredibly appreciative of and proud of. We have videos from them today detailing some of what we need to know about what they're involved in and what's happening in Washington, D.C. And so you will next see two of our incredible leaders, and Congressman G.K. Butterfield and Congresswoman Alma Adams, as they update us on the goings-on in Washington, D.C.
Greetings to my friends who are convening for the North Carolina Alliance of Black Elected Officials. First, let me thank the leadership of the Alliance. You are doing great work, and I know you're preparing for the challenges of 2022 and beyond. I also extend my appreciation to the other Black elected officials who serve and represent citizens in every community of our state. Thank you for your incredible passion. And thank you for inviting my dear friend, Brother Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, to be one of your speakers this week. Hakeem is destined for greatness. My friends, there has been exponential growth in the numbers of Black elected officials. It stems from the enforcement of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 has made a profound difference in our state. Prior to 1965, the literacy tests and at-large elections and multi-member districts were used to prevent meaningful African-American participation in the political process. The Voting Rights Act is still on the books, but a key provision has been taken down by the U.S. Supreme Court. The Voting Rights Act required 40 counties in North Carolina to submit proposed voting changes to the Justice Department for pre-clearance to determine if the change will have an adverse effect on minority participation. On June 25th, 2013, the Supreme Court struck down the formula for determining which counties, which states should be subjected to pre-clearance. The formula, the court said, is outdated. It needs to be updated using current conditions. They called upon the Congress of the United States to make the change. I am now the chairman of the House Subcommittee on Elections. We are conducting hearings to build a congressional record that will support updating the formula used for pre-clearance. We will pass an updated formula in the House. The challenge will be getting it passed in the Senate. We will need you to push very hard to get our two senators to support the new formula. If we don't get pre-clearance, if we don't get it back on the books, you can expect discriminatory election law changes to run rampant all across the country in red states controlled by Republicans. Now, on another subject, census data will be published on September 30th. The Republican legislature then will decide how to draw legislative and congressional lines. If they don't get it right, we will exhaust every legal means available to make sure the districts are fairly drawn. It may even result in a delayed primary. I hope not. But we will not stop until we get fair districts in North Carolina. Have a good meeting. Thank you for your friendship. 2022, remember, is a very important year. We all must be fully engaged. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you soon.
Hello, North Carolina Black Alliance, and welcome to the 2021 North Carolina Black Summit. I'm honored to be joining you along with your Mistress of Ceremonies, Senator Valerie Foushee, your Master of Ceremonies and Executive Director, Courtney Crowder, my colleague, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, Governor Cooper, Attorney General Stein, Judge Earls, and the scores of Black elected officials who truly represent how the strong grow great in the Old North State. I'm Congresswoman Alma Adams, and as one of North Carolina's 842 Black elected officials and one of Mecklenburg's 41 Black elected officials as well, I'm honored to bring you greetings from the United States House of Representatives, including our Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, our congressional Black Caucus Chair Joyce Beatty, and our historic number of Black Congressional Committee chairs. In the House, I serve you as the Vice Chair of the Agriculture Committee, as the Chair of the Education and Labor Committee's Subcommittee on Workforce Protections, and as a member of the Financial Services Committee. I'm also the co-founder and co-chair of two bipartisan caucuses in the Congress, the Congressional Historically Black Colleges and Universities Caucus and the Black Maternal Health Caucus. On HBCUs, I'm looking forward to working with President Joe Biden on helping our HBCUs build back better as we pass historic infrastructure legislation, because we know how instrumental our HBCUs are in creating the next generation of Black leaders. Of course, you can't have Black leaders without Black mamas. Last week was Black Maternal Health Week, and this year I introduced the Black Maternal Health Momnibus Act of 2021, a package of 12 bills that addresses the Black maternal health crisis in our country. Bills like this wouldn't happen without representation. The representation that comes by having Black elected officials like your Speaker, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. I'll tell you, this week was a great week to be a Black elected official in North Carolina. Talking with Vice President, the African-American in Guilford, talking with the first Black Vice President in Guilford County was inspiring. I even wore my pink Chuck Taylors to go see Kamala. But in all seriousness, though, seeing the first Black woman in that office come back to sit at the old Woolworth's counter on Monday, it said a lot about how far we've come, but also about why we've had to come so far. From Shirley Chisholm to Barack Obama to Kamala Harris, we've seen how much we can accomplish when we empower Black Americans. So to you, Black Alliance, I have this message. Tomorrow is up to us, and it's all about power. And power is what makes the difference in lives and communities. And the first thing you have to understand about power and how to get it is you don't ask someone how to get it or where it is or can you have it. You take it. And once you've taken it, you use it. So as someone who's been there before, I say, don't be afraid to be the person who's fighting for that power, from the school board to the city council, to the General Assembly, to Congress and beyond. And thank you all for all that you do to lift our voices. Thank you for your work to have Black elected officials in 77 North Carolina counties. I look forward to continuing to work with you so that that number can one day be 100. Thank you all. God bless you, and God bless our state of North Carolina.
So as always, we are thankful for the words of Congressman G.K. Butterfield and Congresswoman Alma Adams. We talk so much about how our voices from our History Makers panel grounds our work and lets us know how relevant the work of the Black Alliance is. But we also are encouraged by those words and the commitment of those two members of Congress. They have been long in this work with us at every single level of government that they've each represented in each of their distinguished careers. So we're grateful and proud and really look forward to the ongoing advocacy that's surely to come in partnership with those two powerhouse members of Congress. So we're grateful for Congressman G.K. Butterfield and Congresswoman Alma Adams. But next up, we're in for a treat as we head into our last event of the day, essentially in the Senator Jeannie Hopkins Lucas luncheon that will feature Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. We know that in the interim that we're going to hear from Eugene Taylor, who will join us this morning. Now, Mr. Taylor is also known as the Drum Prophet, and he's been entertaining audiences with his musical talents for over 20 years. He's originally born in Memphis, Tennessee. He now lives in Wake Forest, North Carolina, and he's increasingly becoming one of North Carolina's most sought after local performers. We're grateful for that import from Memphis, Tennessee. As a devout follower of Christ, Taylor's message is one of hope, reaching across religious and secular boundaries. His rhythm will hold you captive and your heart will melt with inspiration. Combining his soulful vocals and eclectic mix of whistling, finger snapping, drumming, and tapping out rhythms, Taylor engenders a mind-blowing entertainment experience that you will not forget. So please join me in welcoming Eugene Taylor, the drum prophet, to this year's North Carolina Black Summit. Please enjoy the performance, and I know you will.
North Carolina Black Alliance. Black Summit. Come on, let us rise together. Come on. North Carolina Black Alliance. I can be called heroes. I must in faith and hope. His rhythm is my horizon for all a new horizon. Come on. I rise in loving care. I rise against despair. I rise to sing his song. Come on. Every morning, noon, and night, I rise toward the light. Though despair's grip once felt, I rise above myself. I rise in loving care. I rise against despair. I rise above the storm. I rise to sing his song. Come on. Above the noise and chaos, a loving hand to guide us. With love and kindness wide, a joyful people rise. We rise against despair. We rise against the storm. We rise against despair. We rise above the storm. We rise to sing this song. Amen, I say to you. Make haste and spread the news. The news is God, that God is King. Forever hearts will sing. We rise in loving the King. We rise to sing this song. Come on. Let us rise together. Let us rise. In spite of worry, fears, let's wipe away the tears. There be done. All people now as one. We rise in loving care. We rise against despair. We rise above the storm. We rise to sing the song. Do it all. Make a joyful noise. Make a joyful noise. Let it set you free. Come on. Shout it through the air. Yeah, 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 yeah. Shout it from the tree. Yeah. Shout it from the mountain top to the open sea. Shout it from the rooftop, shout it on your knees. Oh, 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 oh. Make a joyful noise. Let love and mercy reign. Shout out grace and glory. Shout out all the day. Shout it when you're working. Shout it when it's hazy. Shout it when you're walking. Let them think you're crazy. Oh, 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 oh. Thank you. When the sun rises this morning, it wasn't surprised. I thank God I'm still alive. It's a blessing that I can teach you and me a lesson. So open up your mouth right now and start to listen. I need you. You need me. We need each other. I want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me. I need you. You need me. We need each other. North Carolina Black Alliance Summit. I need you. You need me. We need each other. Thank you.
We hope that you enjoyed that great performance by Eugene Taylor, the drum prophet. Hello, my name is Charles Evans, Chairman of the Cumberland County Board of Commissioners, Chairman of the North Carolina Black County Officials, and a board member of the North Carolina Black Alliance. I am very excited to introduce this year's recipients of our 2021 Trailblazer Awards. This award acknowledges the many years of public service provided to advance Black communities, and we are grateful for their servant leadership. The legacy that each of these women have charted have created opportunities and created pathways for everyone attending this conference. The North Carolina Black Alliance is honored to acknowledge their efforts. We're recognizing Cumberland County Commissioner, Dr. Jeanette Council, the retired Golden Leaf Foundation CEO, Dr. Valeria Lynch Lee, and retired Dare County Commissioner, the Honorable Virginia Tillett. We are excited to hear from this year's Trailblazer Awards recipients.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Commissioner Glenn Adams from Cumberland County. It is my honor and a pleasure to accept this award from my mentor and friend, Commissioner Jeanette Council. These are the remarks Commissioner Council wished to express for receiving the North Carolina Black Alliance's 2021 Trailblazer Award. I am earnestly grateful for the recognition I have received for my dedication to community and leadership over the years, because I am sure that every other nominee for this award was as capable, if not more, of winning this award. As we continue to address issues ranging from voting rights, gerrymandering, criminal justice reform, health and wellness, economic development to education, I remain centered and committed to advancing our agenda to enhance Black communities by developing and promoting systematic policy change, as well as youth and leadership development. I want to acknowledge everyone involved in organizing this virtual 15th annual North Carolina Black Summit and close by saying thank you.
Thank you for the honor of recognizing me as a trailblazer. This is especially meaningful to me as I am in the company of so many trailblazers, both in the audience as well as the other honorees. I'm well aware that trails are blazed not by one person, but a team that helps to clear the path. I'm indebted to those who cleared the path for me, too many to name, but I know some of you are in the audience and you were a part of the team that made my journey possible. Thank you for continuing the work of expanding opportunities and hope for people throughout the state and the country. There's still so much work to be done. Too many barriers that are blocking progress. The united front that the North Carolina Alliance of Black Alliance brings to the task will move us all forward. Again, thank you for this honor, and thank you for what you do to make our state and country the place we want to live in.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Virginia Simmons Tillett, and I'm from the Outer Banks of North Carolina, a little town on Roanoke Island called Manteo, God's country. First, I would like to thank the North Carolina Black Alliance organization for this prestigious award. It is certainly an honor to be a part of a special group of North Carolina citizens, the Black elected officials throughout North Carolina. I would like to say that you cannot imagine the gratitude and honor I feel as being chosen as a recipient of this amazing award. My years of working and serving my community has in the least been challenging, but also rewarding. I grew up in Manteo on Roanoke Island, and watching the circumstances that surrounded and suppressed so many, I knew immediately that I wanted to help bring change to my home and my community. Nothing I did and assisted in was for recognition, but for the betterment of those who were not as aware of how to navigate seeking change as myself. I am humbled, yet blessed to have been chosen to receive this award. As I know, the committee could have chosen anyone just as worthy as myself. I am thankful for all those who continue to serve the North Carolina Black Alliance organization and your commitment to ensuring that the voices of all people are heard. Again, I would like to express the honor I feel in receiving the 2021 Trailblazer Award. Thank you once again, and God bless each of you.
As we continue to celebrate our 15th Black Summit, focused on the fight facing the future, we are looking forward to hearing from our Jeannie Hopkins Lucas Luncheon speaker, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. Congressman Jeffries represents the 8th Congressional District of New York and serves on the House Judiciary Committee and House Budget Committee. Serving his 5th term in Congress, Representative Jeffries is chair of the House Democratic Caucus, having been elected to that position by his colleagues in November of 2018. In that capacity, he is the 5th highest ranking Democrat in the U.S. House of Representatives. He is also the former whip of the Congressional Black Caucus and previously co-chaired the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, where he helped develop the For the People Act. In Congress, Representative Jeffries not only represents the 8th Congressional District of New York, but he represents all of us as a tireless advocate for social and economic justice. He has worked hard to help residents impacted by the devastation of the COVID-19 pandemic, reform our criminal justice system, improve the economy for everyday Americans, and protect our health care from right-wing attacks. During the 116th Congress, Representative Jeffries was one of the most effective legislators in Congress, passing multiple bills through the House of Representatives and into law with substantial bipartisan and stakeholder support. In January of 2020, Representative Jeffries was selected by Speaker Nancy Pelosi to serve as one of 7 House impeachment managers in the Senate trial of President Donald Trump, becoming the first African-American man to serve in that role. On June 25th, 2020, the House of Representatives passed H.R. 7120, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Representative Jeffries helped lead the charge with respect to passage of this historic police reform bill, which included legislation authored by the congressman to criminalize the chokehold and other inherently dangerous tactics, such as a knee to the neck. Representative Jeffries has played a major role in shaping the congressional response to the COVID-19 pandemic. He has fought hard to assist state and local governments whose budgets have been devastated by the virus, pushed for an extension of the emergency unemployment benefit, and supported efforts to keep everyday Americans in their homes. In the 115th Congress, Representative Jeffries worked across the aisle as the lead Democratic sponsor of the First Step Act, which is S-756 Public Law number 115-391, a strong bipartisan criminal justice reform bill that the president signed into law in December 2020. 18. Please welcome our speaker, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to be with each and every one of you, to Valerie and to Courtney, to the entire North Carolina Black Alliance, to the board members, and of course to the distinguished elected officials who are working so hard on behalf of the communities that you are privileged to represent. It's a great honor and a privilege to have this opportunity to spend some time with you. I'm certainly thankful for my colleagues in the North Carolina Congressional Delegation, G.K. Butterfield, the former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, former judge, distinguished member of Congress, mentor of mine. Certainly thankful for his tremendous leadership. And of course, David Price and Alma Adams, who do such a great job on behalf of their congressional districts. And then our great new members, Deborah Ross and Kathy Manning. I believe Deborah may be with us today too, and I'm certainly thankful for all that she brings to the table as a dynamic new member of the House of Representatives. From time to time, I've had the opportunity over the years to serve as a keynote speaker, sometimes during a lunch event, sometimes during a dinner event, and I'm generally uncertain as to whether it is more perilous to speak before the food has been served, when folks are hungry, or after the food has been served when folks are tired. Thankfully, in the context of this digital Zoom world that we now live in, I don't have to figure out the dangers of timing in that regard. However, I am still going to try and follow the advice of a former Sunday school teacher of mine when I was growing up in the Cornerstone Baptist Church in Bedford-Stuyvesant. She said to me, on the question of public speaking, Jeffries, always remember, be brief, be bright, and be gone. And so I'm just going to try to elucidate as best I can in the time that has been allocated to me on the theme that you have set forward as you fight for these incredibly important issues, fight for equal voting rights, fight for the highest quality education for our children, fight for high quality healthcare, and of course, fight for criminal justice reform. For such a time as this, as we navigate our way through a multitude of crises in this country, a COVID-19 pandemic, which is both a public health crisis and an economic crisis that we know has hit the Black community in a disproportionately adverse fashion in terms of the pain and the suffering and the death that we continue to experience, as well as the economic trauma connected to the pandemic. We're grappling with a racial justice crisis here in America. We've come a long way. We still have a long way to go. And the reality is, as you know, systemic racism has been in the soil of this country since 1619. America, a country formed on the basis of very high ideals. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equally, entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, liberty and justice for all, land of the free, home of the brave, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. America, a country formed, anchored in these high ideals. But we also know at the same time there was a birth defect during the founding of the Republic, a genetic imperfection, if you will, on the question of race, manifesting itself in the form of chattel slavery, one of the worst crimes against humanity ever perpetrated in the history of the world, and we've been dealing with its legacy ever since. And then, of course, a democracy crisis that we confront that took hold in a sharp way on January 6th, a violent attack on the United States Capitol, incited by the former twice impeached, out of control
President of the United States of America. Nothing less than democracy hanging in the balance. And while that attack should have brought the Congress and the country together, there have been many people across this republic who have been further radicalized by the election of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and continue to push voter suppression laws all across the map. A democracy crisis, a racial justice crisis, a public health crisis, and an economic crisis, all colliding at the same time. And so all of you have certainly been called to serve for such a time as this. A difficult time filled with trials and tribulations. But I often say to folks, and I had the opportunity to spend 8 years during the presidency of Barack Obama, 4 of which I was in Congress, his last 4 years, and then the last 4 years under the previous president. I thought that there was no better time to be in Congress than when we had the opportunity to serve alongside President Barack Obama. No more important time to be in Congress, in public service, in state and local and county office than right now. Because our folks are counting on us, not simply to return to normal, because normal was problematic in all of the areas that you have set forth to make the fight about. Normal wasn't good enough in terms of one person, one vote, because there were people still trying to suppress our capacity to participate fully in our democracy. Normally, certain wasn't good enough in the context of the educational landscape. The system has been broken for far too long as it relates to our children. Frederick Douglass, of course, once famously observed that it is easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. Normal is not good enough when you've got a broken public school system resulting in broken children, broken men and women. And normal certainly was not good enough in the context of a healthcare system that is constantly under attack, where African Americans suffer disproportionately high rates of all sorts of ailments and chronic illnesses and diseases that are deadly, disproportionately high rates of asthma and childhood obesity and heart disease and certain forms of cancer and diabetes, respiratory illnesses, all of which, of course, make the COVID-19 pandemic deadlier for us than other communities. And we know normal wasn't good enough when we've been in the midst of a mass incarceration epidemic for the last 50 years. It began the war on drugs in 1971, when Richard Nixon declared drug abuse public enemy #1. At the time, there were less than 300,000 people incarcerated in America. Today, 2.3 million, disproportionately Black and Latino, and a significant number of those individuals who have been incarcerated over the years, imprisoned for nonviolent drug offenses. America, the land of the free and home of the brave, incarcerates more people than any other country in the world. Disproportionately Black and Latino. It's a stain on our democracy. We can't return to normal. So I commend you on the issues that you have set forth to fight on, to stand your ground on, to make progress on, and we join you in that effort as we endeavor to build back better. Joe Biden, when he was a candidate, and those who embraced his candidacy at the time thought that, yes, while others seemed to be change agents generationally and in terms of how they presented themselves, their characteristics, their demographics, the thing that often appealed to some as it relates to Joe Biden's candidacy
prior to the pandemic was that we had an out of control situation coming out of the Oval Office, and decency represented change. Authenticity represented change. Normalcy represented change. Joe Biden, of course, the former vice president, embodied all of that, but he made an important pivot on the campaign trail that has become the defining narrative of his presidency. He said, no, we're not simply going to go back to normal. We're going to build back better. And that's what we need to focus on. That's what we need to do in each of the areas that you have set forth, and in so many other places where African-American communities, working class communities of every race, immigrant communities, Indian country have been left behind. We can't return to normal. We have to build back better. Yes, we find ourselves, as I close, we find ourselves in a situation where we've been dealing with unexpected adversity. The election of the former president, the toxic nature of governance over the last several years, the January 6th violent insurrection, unexpected adversity, the pandemic, the public health crisis, the economic crisis, unexpected adversity reminds me of the time that some young folks were gathered at the home of one of the wealthiest people in the world. They gathered at this home. It's a big estate. And they're on one side of a giant lake. And these young people are gathered on the side of this giant lake. On the other side, the owner of the estate, one of the wealthiest people in the world, shows up, sees these young people, and calls out to them, says, if any of you is willing to jump in the lake, rescue the turtle, and can make it to the other side, I'll give you anything that you want in this world. And about 5 minutes pass by, nobody responds. And so the owner of the estate turns around and begins to walk away. And as the owner is walking away, all of a sudden, he hears a big splash, turns back around, sees one young person in the lake frantically trying to make it to the other side. And somehow this young person dodges the crocodile, dodges the alligators that are in the lake, bobs and weaves, makes it to the middle, scoops up the turtle, bobs and weaves, makes it to the other side, gets out, dries off, hands over the turtle to the owner of the estate, who says, congratulations, I'm not sure how you did it, but you made it to the other side. Now, as I promised, you can have anything that you want in this world. And the young person pauses for a moment, says, well, I just want to know who pushed me in the lake. I'm about to get out of here. What am I trying to say? Sometimes you find yourself in the midst of unexpected adversity. The election of Donald Trump, the COVID-19 pandemic, an economic recession, a crisis in our democracy, a rise in voter suppression efforts. You find yourself in the midst of unexpected adversity. That's where our communities find themselves right now. But our history tells us, the resiliency of our community tells us that whenever you find yourself in the midst of unexpected adversity, you've only got two options. You can either sink or you can swim. And I'm confident, based on the journey that has taken us through chattel slavery and Jim Crow and the KKK and the lynching epidemic and the failures to be included in the New Deal and the GI Bill and the short circuiting of the civil rights movement, the rise of mass incarceration, all the way through this present moment, every time we found ourselves in a tough spot, including as it relates to the previous president, we've always made it to the other side. And so I salute you. I salute the North Carolina Black Alliance. I know together we're going to make it to the other side and continue America's long, necessary, and majestic march toward a more perfect union. God bless you. God bless the Alliance. God bless the great Tar Heel State and the United States of America.
We want to thank you, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, for such brilliant, moving remarks. We remember for such a time as this, our folks in North Carolina are counting on us, not just to reset to a new racist normal, but to go beyond, build back better, making sure that we make it to the other side. We want to thank you all for joining. We hope that you have seen, heard something that has captivated, inspired, and motivated you to continue the fight ahead. We would like to thank all of our sponsors, all of our honorees, all of our presenters, participants, and most importantly, we would like to thank the hard-working staff who helped behind the scenes to bring this virtual summit experience to life. More importantly, we'd like to also thank Ms. Dion Lester of DCL Management for coordinating another fantastic, historic NC Black Summit. We hope that this year's summit has helped you to focus on the fight. And for the next year, 2 years, and 4 years, as we begin to face the future with so much at stake in our communities across North Carolina, we can build better together, as Congressman Jeffries stated. Our thoughts and prayers are with those in Pasquotank County that are dealing with yet another incident of law enforcement violence, use of force, and the murder of Andrew Brown Jr. And we also want to pause to recognize the Black elected leaders, officials in North Carolina who we've lost in the past 2 years since our last summit. Now, as we continue to leave this place, but know the work forward is much needed, we ask that you continue to join us in the next events sponsored or supported by the North Carolina Black Summit. We have a host of and beyond series happening on a county level, community action conversations with Black county commissioners, hosted and led by Commissioner Charles Evans, chairman of the North Carolina Alliance of Black County Officials. We also have a Divine Non-Legislative Day for all members in the Divine Non and social civic groups happening on May the 12th. And then, of course, we want you to join us right back here in 2022 for our 16th annual Black Summit, hopefully an in-person experience with some points for those that are still wanting to attend virtually. Those dates will be April 28th through April 29th, 2022 in Raleigh, North Carolina. And of course, all of this information can be found on our website, ncblackalliance.org. Once again, thank you all so much for your participation over the past 2 days. We hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you as we continue to focus on the fight facing our future. Have a great evening.